Hello, this is Cynthia Douthit, and I would like to give you a few words of encouragement and help you to maybe stay strong and focused on the importance of the days to come. Before us, in the midst of the events in our nation, as well as what is going on in Israel and soon to be going on in the world, there's an opportunity and a mission if you choose to accept it. Many are being silenced now. And a friend of mine had posted on her Facebook that she just was going to go back into her own little world. And I can understand that. And when I read that, I thought, nope, not me. I'm going to shout from the rooftop and be a thorn to some. I'm going to ramp up my study and my time with the Lord, and I'm going to teach where the opportunity presents itself. Many people would like to silence us and they want to defeat us and discourage us, but that is not the path that I'm choosing to take. And I encourage you to stay on the path of the Lord, to speak up the truth when the opportunity presents itself. We can view this time as a complete disaster, as the Hebrew children did in the land of Goshen under the new Pharaoh. And if you notice behind me, I have a very well-known scene of Charlton Heston as Moses, as he is in the pit helping to stomp the mud with the straw to make bricks. Now, as we look at Exodus 1:6-14, we see that the Hebrew children, the Hebrew people were not slaves when they went down into Egypt. They had jobs, they worked, they had families, and they did have a different mindset than Egypt. And Egypt is a picture of sin, bondage, and the world. We know that the Hebrew children, the descendants of Israel, we see that they had a different mindset. They worshiped the one true God. And we notice that as Pharaoh, as Egypt, as the world oppressed them, God blessed them. They multiplied, they spread out, they were increasingly fruitful. And so this is what I encourage us to do in the days to come, to be fruitful, to study the word, to stay before the Lord. And we see that this story is a little bit like creation. The people, the Hebrew children, as they worshiped the one true God and as they were oppressed, they multiplied. So we see that a new king, a Pharaoh, arose over Egypt, and maybe a little bit like the Antichrist. It is said that this new king knew nothing of Joseph. He didn't know anything about the history or the economy of his land of Egypt and how this Hebrew had saved their nation from famine and had an economic boom. He didn't know that, or did he choose not to know that? Or possibly the reason he didn't know it is their history had been erased. This is something that was done in Egypt. As the new pharaohs came in, they would often tear down the statues, or they would rework the statue to not look like the person that it was supposed to be honoring. So we know that they also took names of pharaohs and people off of the statues, kind of like off the government works, and they would just tear down the statues. And obviously we see that this Pharaoh knew nothing of the God of Joseph. So in effect, he knew nothing of Joseph. And we can look at that in our life. A lot of times people judge God or judge Yeshua Jesus by our actions. Now, that's not fair to God, and it's not fair to Yeshua Jesus, but a lot of times that's how people view God or Jesus, is through our actions. And so this Pharaoh knew nothing of Joseph, and he didn't know anything of the one true God. So this Pharaoh dreamed up, or he was fed information to make him have such a great fear of the descendants of Israel that he decided to move to put them under a harsh, oppressed state. And I'll tell you that what Pharaoh meant for evil and bad, God used for good. God Elohim provided deliverance of his people out of Egypt to the promised land. This idea of setting harsh taskmasters and oppression over the Hebrew children actually set the events in motion for the deliverance and the redemption out of Egypt. And again, Egypt is a picture of sin, bondage, and the world. So all of this was just a part of the plan that God had that would deliver these people through the vessel of Moses to the promised land. We see that Pharaoh also said, Let's deal with these people in a smart way, a crafty way, a political way. They were using political craftiness to limit worship or gatherings, to discourage the people. Oppression was what they were using to put fear in the people. And Pharaoh's fear of the children of Israel really was unfounded. You know, they had never tried to leave Egypt. Most of them were born there. There were 70 that went down, and all that generation had passed. And so all of these Hebrew descendants, these Jewish people, so to speak, they were born in Egypt. They didn't know anything else. There was no reason for this Pharaoh to be afraid of them. But he was afraid that they would rise up, join an enemy, start a war, and leave. And you know what? His fears came true. They didn't start a war, but God worked on their behalf, and many plagues came upon that nation. And what he feared most, that they would leave, is exactly what happened. God used Moses to lead the people out of out of Egypt, out of sin and bondage, to go to the promised land, which is ultimately, we see, the state of Israel. Pharaoh was so afraid of them leaving, and his fears came true. So I ask you to join me as we look at this days to come, these years to come, as mission opportunities. You know, I'm not a real good brick maker, and you may not be either, but we may be oppressed and we may be working side by side. So I'll ask you, or I'll charge you with encouraging that brick maker that's working next to you. We need to stay focused, we need to stay encouraged, and we need to have our strength through the Lord. Blessings and shalom, shalom.